Hello, solopreneurs. I have so much great stuff for you today. In case you didn't notice, I did skip a podcast last Friday, and it was really important to me to make sure I was able to tell you why, and actually some of what you need to know to be able to avoid these same kinds of things happening to you. You see, 10 days ago, I had major surgery. I had spent all of last week in the hospital, and it wasn't till late Thursday that I got home. So doing a podcast on Friday was kind of out of the question. Just not going to happen. But this week, yes, I'm 1 hour away from my pain meds, so it's really important that we squeeze this in so you get this stuff while it's still on my mind, and this is heavily on my mind. You see, all of us face stuff while running our business. Life doesn't slow down just because you have a business or deadlines or whatever. Throughout my years as a solopreneur, I've had surgeries, I've had hospital stays, illnesses, deaths in the family, moves across the country, and many, many other interruptions. They just don't stop, do they? But here's the deal. These things can kill your business if you aren't prepared. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Welcome to the Solopreneur Life Podcast. I am your host, Kathryn Aragon, and our job here at Solopreneur Life is to help you launch and grow a six-figure business. Plus, we don't want to stop at six figures, do we? Without overwhelm or burnout. And it can be so challenging, especially when life kicks in, just like it did for me 10 days, well, it's more than 10 days ago. So take a minute, I'll tell you the story, but before I do, I want you to subscribe. Go ahead and click the button if you're on YouTube, or make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast channel. So here's the story, okay? I've been having a lot of abdominal discomfort, shall we say, for the last 6 months. Well, it finally came to a head was it a full 2 weeks ago? Yeah. So I actually spent a couple of nights in the emergency room. And with COVID, they don't have beds. So when I finally convinced them, you know what, this is pretty major. I think you need to keep me overnight or I'm just going to be back tomorrow. I ended up in a bed in a hallway for a couple of days. Pre-surgery, I got a real room. It was kind of an award, but I actually had some privacy. That was amazing. Went into surgery, and then I spent another few nights in the hospital in a recovery room, post-op, all that kind of stuff. So we're talking a week in the hospital. Now, during this time, I was onboarding a new client. We haven't actually finalized the contracts yet. I had several due dates. It was some of my last articles for the month for some of my clients, which means we had to finish those, get them in on time, invoice them, so nothing would skip a beat. Now, all these actions are essential for running your business, and you know as well as I do, if you develop a reputation for missing deadlines, it's the death to your business. And here I was talking to a brand new client, and they were like, oh, well, do I really want to sign on with this woman who's now in surgery? These are the kinds of things. So yeah, you're juggling, who do I tell? How do I tell them? What do I tell them? So it doesn't scare them. Most of my clients have no idea what my last 2 weeks have looked like, but a few of them do. And in this one who I'm signing on right now, she knew. She had to know because I had to stop interfacing with her. Now, here's what I want you to hear out of all of this, and I'll talk more about this later, but you've got to have a plan. All this stuff, you just know, expect it. It's coming. If it's not happening now, you don't have to have health problems now. If you establish a long-term business, you are going to hit those moments when something bad happens, something that stops you in your track, puts you in the hospital for a week, puts you in bed for 4 years like it did me years ago. Anything like this can happen. The death in a family, what if it's a child or a spouse or a parent? All of these things can disrupt everything. So you need a plan. Now, what I want to focus on today is primarily prevention. And this is, I want you to ask yourself, are you taking care of you? As a solopreneur, you are your business. You're not just the face of your business. You are the business. So it's essential that you're taking care of yourself. Now, I am the world's worst at going to the doctor. I don't like it. If I can solve it on my own, I want to. But I'm also really good about taking care of myself. I had to be. Back when I had the spinal cord injury, my GP, he was the best caregiver during that time because his advice was feed your body and your body will be able to heal itself. Now, I've watched that happen over the years. I went from the doctors expecting me never to walk again to being able to get out of bed, get around the house, and now I'm if you look at me, you won't know I have anything wrong with me. You don't realize how much I'm pacing myself. So yes, I'm dealing with stuff, but for all practical purposes, I have my life back. And it's because I took care of myself. Now, I didn't do it soon enough. I wish I could look back and say, from the time I was a teenager, I was feeding my body the way I am now. But the message is, it doesn't matter when you start. I want you to start now. Now, here's how we're going to approach this, okay? There are just a few areas that you need to focus on. And this lines up well with New Year's resolutions. If you think about it, we're just 1 month in. Maybe whatever resolutions you've set up for yourself, you've already kind of waned on. It's like, okay, I don't have time to exercise. I'm tired of trying to lose these pounds or whatever. But I don't want you to think about it like that. I want you to think about it as business insurance, because that's what this is. To protect your business, you have to protect you. And when my doctor first told me that I needed to be taking vitamins and these supplements and those supplements, I was rolling my eyes. I'm going to be honest. But after the spinal cord injury, when he said, you need to take this, that, and the other thing, man, you better believe I took it. And I've been taking them religiously since that moment. So here's the deal. I'm in the hospital and they're running all these tests on me to see if my body, my little old body, can handle surgery. They put me on a heart stress test. They did ultrasounds, all this stuff to make sure I would survive being cut into. Well, guess what? I passed with flying colors. I've got the heart of like a 25-year-old, despite 10 years of being disabled. That's really important to understand. I haven't been exercising for the last 10 years, and I still have a heart that's clear and strong. And actually, I had more than one doctor say, wow, you passed with flying colors. All because of the supplements I take, all because of the way I take care of my body. So this doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be strenuous, but you need to start now, okay? That's my word. I'm going to be your advisor on this one right now. I really want you to do this because you need to protect your business. Now, the first thing I'm going to start with is nutrition, because that's the biggest thing for me personally. Most of my adult life, I've not been able to eat a lot of sugar. I went through a lot of years where I didn't eat it at all. And honestly, I think that's part of why my heart is so healthy. They say I have absolutely no obstruction in my heart. There's no calcification in there or anything like that. And here's the deal. Sugar is one of the biggest culprits in holding back your heart, causing heart problems, causing diabetes and other diseases that will impact your ability to run your business. So here's what I advise. When it comes to nutrition, don't just think about calories. Don't think about your weight. Stop thinking like someone who is just trying to lose weight. This is not a diet. This is business insurance. I want you to eat healthier. I want you to eat your vegetables. I'm going to be mom right now. Eat your vegetables, okay? Instead of munching only on chips, and yes, I munch on chips, get yourself carrots or celery or broccoli, stuff that's good for you. Feed your body. Go ahead and eat a little junk food if that flies your kite. And I do. I'm going to be honest, I do. But don't overdo it. Make sure you balance it with eating healthy. Make sure you're feeding your brain and your body. So your body is strong and you hopefully will not end up in the hospital, but your brain is strong. So you never struggle to run your business and, just keep it going no matter what's going on. Now, the second thing, and I've already told you, I can't exercise a lot, but I want you to move. Move as much as you can. If you are capable, if you're strong enough of actually having an exercise routine, do it. But if you're not, and if it's not safe for you to do that, you need to consult with your doctor about that. And you just need to move. For years, all I could do was take a walk around half the block. I couldn't even do the whole block. I was on my walker and I always had to have someone with me just in case I fell because I was relearning how to walk. But I would take that walk, that half block walk every day. And that's part of how I managed to keep my body getting stronger in spite of how inactive I had to be during those years. I know a writer she's a friend of mine on Facebook, and she takes a walk before her writing session and then at the end of the day when she's done. It's a really good way to make sure she gets that activity in first thing in the morning and then to unwind at the end of the day so she could relax. Think about exercise as something, it's not only good for your heart and good for your body, it's good for your mental status. It keeps your mind fresh. It helps you release a lot of the negative energy that might be building up throughout the day. And that's really, really important. Which brings us to the next one, and that is sleep. When it comes to taking care of your body, sleep is probably the most important thing you can do. Now, I know a lot of us struggle with being able to sleep through the night. I've considered myself an insomniac for a lot of years, but I've got an interesting little something I want to share with you. This is something I read just like 2 days ago. There is a type of sleep that before computers, before electricity, there was a natural sleep pattern. It was like there was a first sleep and a second sleep. So every night people would sleep for, 3-4 hours. They would wake up for a couple of hours and then they would have their second sleep, which was going back to bed and finishing up. Now think about that. If that's our natural sleep pattern before computers and electricity, before you started your business, that's not you don't need to be afraid of having trouble sleeping. You don't need to think of that as, I'm an insomniac, I give up. Don't let that stress you because really, we're going to talk about this in a minute, stress is another thing that you really need to manage. So don't let sleep be one of those stressors in your life that keeps you from being at your best. If you're having trouble sleeping and you do like I do, which I do this, I have a first sleep and a second sleep. It's weird. So I'm just relieved to know it's actually kind of normal. Go ahead and find your best time to go to sleep. Relax, sleep. And then if you wake up in the night, I typically just continue to lay there. I'll think about things. I might take notes on something. I don't keep my devices, my electronics next to the bed anymore because I've discovered I sleep better without them. But I do have a pad of paper beside the bed. I might take notes, but usually I just I'll try to remember that. Never do, but that's okay. When I get that second sleep, I wake up refreshed. So do your best to sleep. Follow your own sleep pattern, whatever that happens to be, but protect that time because it's good for your brain, it's good for your body, and it'll keep you healthy. Now, that brings us to our next one, number 4, stress management. So much of running your business feels overwhelming. You just resolve one issue and another one pops up. I know because I live this every day myself. But you've got to manage your stress, because a lot of the diseases that we suffer from, a lot of the illnesses that might strike you have to do with stress. You've got to manage it. There are a lot of my friends who are doing meditation, taking walks, like I just said. Exercise can help you manage it. Whatever you need to do to keep stress low, it's vital that you do that. And then finally, I want you to build in downtime. I try to protect my evenings. I will periodically, if I've got a heavy deadline, I have to work late. But I really do try to keep my computer and my workspace in one room, in this room, my office, and then I go downstairs to an entirely different space in order to relax, eat my dinner, watch TV, and have downtime. That creates that physical break that I need to lay it down, because trust me, it is really difficult for me to lay it down. We had a house at one point, and this was right when I was just beginning to get out of bed. So I was able to come downstairs, and we set up my office in the room right behind where we had our TV room. There were sliding doors. I'm pretty sure it was meant to have a pool table in it, but we put me in it. But guess what? It was right there. I never really felt like I was laying down my work. There wasn't enough physical space. And I know it's a luxury to have as much space as I have in this house, that I can be in completely separate rooms. Many of you may work at your kitchen table. Many of you may work, my son for a while worked at that little desk that's in the kitchen, which means not only was he living in the living space, he was working in that exact same space. And no, there was no separation. That's hard. But you've got to find a way to create some kind of division where maybe it's physically shutting your laptop. Maybe that's how you make that division. When this is shut, I'm done. Maybe you shut it and then you go take a walk around the block. And that creates that physical separation. I've heard of years and years ago, this is when many women didn't work, and they would talk about the husband bringing stress home from work. And he would touch the tree. There was a story of a man who would touch the tree every day before he came into the house. And when someone asked him why he was doing that, he was saying, I'm leaving all my stress out here. I don't want to take it into the house. So whatever works for you, you've got to find a way to put work down and then have your downtime, where you have your time for you, your family, and your hobbies even. Whatever that needs to be for you, create the distance so you can take better care of yourself. Now, all of this, nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, downtime, these are ways you can take care of you. And remember, this isn't a luxury. This isn't you being selfish. You run a business. You're a business owner. This is vital for protecting your business. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how you actually keep your business running when something does happen, because I've had to do it multiple times. The 1 year after I started my business, I had the spinal cord injury. Not only was I in bed in the hospital for a week, I was in bed for 4 years after that. 4 times I took a trip to Panama for stem cell treatment. Each of those, the first one was a month, the others were 2 weeks each. Business never stopped when I did that. I did cancer and cancer treatment, and most recently abdominal surgery. Here's the deal. Your business doesn't have to fold just because something bad happens. You can keep working and you can create redundancies to where it can keep going even if you need to step out for a little time. Now, I've been very, very fortunate. Most of the times that I've had to do this, I had a client who was kind of my bread and butter client, and I could pre-schedule things where it just went nothing skipped a beat while I was out of pocket. And then I could just tune into the computer long enough to do comments and engage with writers or whatever I needed to do. That's not always the case, and I get that, because honestly, this past week, that wasn't the case for me. There was no pre-scheduling anything. So I was 100% dependent on these redundancies that I had built. Now, in this case, all those earlier years, I really was solo. I ran the business all by myself. A year and a half ago, I made the decision that I was going to grow my solo business to where it wasn't so dependent on just me. That's what saved me this time. I had already built up a team of writers, people who they're not employees. It's still my business, but they are contractors. They're people I work with to help me deliver to my clients. I'd also begun onboarding my husband, Jonathan, who co-hosts with me, to help me out in the business. And fortunately for me, he's been paying attention. He's been listening to my client calls. He knows their names, even if they've never seen him. He knows kind of what goes into my business. And periodically, he's helped me out with things. Now, he's part of the business. He's a part that you don't see on the front end. But he saved my skin over this past week because he stepped right in and he began emailing my clients. He started managing my writers. He did some of the first rounds of edits, so all I had to do was a final look over. That little bit of redundancy, just having somebody on board who I could talk to, who I could rely on when I was 100% down, that saved my business. It kept a client from backing out just because I was in the hospital. And that so easily could have happened. But it didn't. Now, I've got some really, really good ideas about how you can build these redundancies. Even if you're brand new, even if you're younger and you've got children in the house and your husband has his own job or your wife has her own job and you're still doing it all by yourself. But here's the deal. I'm not going to share that with you today because I'm saving it for our summit, which is coming up in April. Now, last year we called it Solopreneur Live, which got confusing because Solopreneur Life and Solopreneur Live sound exactly the same when you're talking fast. So we decided we needed a name change. If you came to the event last year, thank you. I'm so glad you were a part of it. But this year we're calling it Solo Summit. And I want you to come. I'm going to talk more about this because it's so vital. It was important to me before. It's even more important to me today because I'm still recovering from major surgery and my business is thriving. Yours can too, no matter what life throws at you. But you need to come. You need to pay attention to this and you need to start putting down the systems that will carry your business into the future and help you grow beyond yourself. Put on your calendar April 20 to 21. That's when Solo Summit is going to be. And please, please, please go to solopreneurlife.com and get on my mailing list because I'm going to be sending alerts. We need to start soon to, get you onboarded, get your ticket, make sure that you can be a part. Okay, now let's go back to our topic. Jonathan, do you have anything to add to the stuff we've talked about? I mean, you were a big part of this past week.
Well, I like what you were talking about in terms of the balance that is necessary to run a business. Because remember when we were in college, we were sort of entrepreneurial from the day we met.
Yeah, we were.
We started a catering business, and it was just started out as a favor to friends. Basically, remember we were provided romantic dinners on location wherever they wanted.
That was so much fun, guys. Every couple we did a dinner for got married.
Yes, and we would set up this romantic dinner.
We were kind of proud of that.
Kathryn would cook this meal to order. I would get dressed up in my tuxedo, and we would serve them on the steps of the Parthenon in Nashville, or in a student center, the loft of the student center. And yes, they all got married. But I remember we were looking at how to scale that. It was difficult to scale. And I talked with a business owner friend of mine, a guy who had started multiple businesses, very successful. And he said, well, here's what you first need to remember. Any business you start, you got to be willing to be married to it. Mm-hmm. So that means it has to take a place of preeminence in your life. But if it does so at the expense of your family
your health,
then what's the point? The point was to create a lifestyle.
Right.
So it really is important to find that balance, to be able to put things down. The other thing you said that I thought was really significant, and for some people for whom square footage isn't a commodity, can be difficult, and that is to create a space, right? So when you were saying, sometimes it's necessary to create a space that you can walk away from, but that can take the form of basically, closing your laptop and putting it away.
Right.
So it's not right there, or even putting your phone where it's not buzzing and interrupting.
Oh, you had that for years. In your career, your phone was the thing that kept buzzing at you.
Right.
And it interrupted family time so often.
Right, and it was difficult in my former line of work to put people off, but I had to learn how to set that boundary. And that's important too, because otherwise clients will take advantage as well. I mean, they got their own deadlines, they got their own priorities, right?
So true. I mean, we've had back in that time period where my office was right behind the sofa, and I couldn't get away. I couldn't go take walks at that house. I wasn't strong enough. It was too difficult. There wasn't a way to get my walker over those bumpy streets. So creating that space was hard. And at that time, I did have a client who wanted interaction 24/7, which that was my turn to interrupt the family time. But fortunately, what I discovered there is I had these drawing room doors, the sliding doors that I could close. And that gave me just a little bit of separation. It was still stressful, but I was able to do it.
Yeah, and what scientists have learned in brain, mapping and stuff that's available today is your brain is working in the background already. And so if you don't give your brain a good excuse, a good division, it will steal your presence in the moment, right?
That's so true.
Which doesn't give you the quality that Solopreneur Life is really all about, creating a lifestyle, not just an income.
Right.
So I thought that was important. And I remember one time we had we created a desk that could close, because we were in a small apartment and we had a little bookshelf, and we made a desk that would close.
Right.
And sometimes that can be enough.
Right.
If you have space, then all the better. The other thing that I thought was incredibly important, and is really sometimes hard for solopreneurs to think about doing, is the redundancy, because we think we wearing all the hats. It's all on me. So that's significant. And you're going to talk about that. You're actually going to lead a session at the summit.
Yeah, this one is so important, because the myth is that as a solopreneur, it is all you. But that's a myth. And I have so many ideas for how we can support one another and make sure that no matter what your situation, you can build in those redundancies. It's got to happen. Otherwise, like I said, this past week would have killed my business. I could have potentially lost most of my clients, but I didn't, because fortunately, I've done this enough. I've done this for enough years. I do think this way. I already had everything in place. I just hadn't really activated it yet. But the minute I'd said, okay, you've got to take over, things were happening. I had my writers making sure that they were giving me their best work. I had Jonathan stepping in and managing things. And I know I've got a client whose son is wanting to learn how to do what she does. Use your children. They're so smart. They can do things. They're watching you anyway. Let them step into it and understand that, oh, wow, this is kind of addictive. I like this too. I know my son, our son, I should say, he's got his own entrepreneurial business now. Our daughter does too. And it's largely because they grew up watching me do this. So it's good for all of us.
Absolutely. And it's good for them. It's good for them to see. But again, you have to model that balance. It goes back, because otherwise you're creating this
a legacy of overwork,
of being a slave to your job instead of creating a lifestyle. But I think that's really important. I think it's also important to remember, and you're going to go into a lot of detail during the summit. But just having something as simple as a long runway for your workload.
That's a really good one. And a lot of my writers don't really understand this. When I say due date, I don't really mean that's the day I want it. I mean, that's the deadline, and everything drops dead if you don't meet it. What I like is a long enough runway, and this is actually how I used to do it when it was just me. I would schedule things out 2 to 3 weeks in advance, and inevitably a writer would see what my deadline was or what the publication date was, and they would go, "Oh, there's time." Why? Because they're so used to waiting to the last minute. And that may work when you're in junior high and high school, but it does not work when it's a business.
And yet, there are so many, even some of the enterprise companies you've worked with, they fall into that trap too, of everything being last minute and deadlines not really being meaningful.
Yeah, they're not real. They're suggested finish dates or something.
And nobody expects anybody to meet them. So it's just the launch date just keeps getting pushed out.
It's kind of a token date. I don't understand that at all.
But this is actually more important for solopreneurs because we don't have all this money and development that we can keep dipping into. With that money that's being postponed by not meeting a deadline is income that's not helping us in the moment.
It's not going in your bank. The more you push back deadlines, the less you're getting paid. Don't do that. So, for instance, let's say I have an article that, I actually do this with some of my clients. They have articles that are due all throughout the month. So there's a due date for me that's like January 28th. That article's already turned in. And the reason is, the faster I turn it in, the more time they've got to work on it. I'm not holding them back where they can't meet their deadline, but also I can go ahead and invoice them and get that money in the bank. Don't just hit a deadline, beat it, and beat it by enough margin that when you're in the hospital and something negative is happening, you've got a sick child, whatever it happens to be, you can be there because you know that deadline was already met.
Exactly. I think that's so key, and as a solopreneur, more important because you need to create that buffer. And that's where, some of that downtime, it may occasionally have to get eaten up because something happened and moved, it basically usurped work time, so now downtime has to yield. But if you don't create that buffer, if you're slamming it up against the wall all the time, waiting for that last minute inspiration, it's not really
inspiration. I trust it's panic.
It's not a good strategy. It's panic. Yeah. So that's one of the things that you're very good at, and I think you're the ideal person to lead that session at the summit because you're so good at organizing not just time but workflow. One of our clients just last night, you actually were working on their social media strategy for the next 6 months. We have topics for their social media for the next 6 months, and obviously something can change, things can move around. But that means that if something happens and he's not available, we have stuff that we can keep his content running.
This actually, guys, really, really was impressive because I was working on that earlier this week. When I got this message last night, like after hours last night, I'm going to be in the studio next Monday. Can you give me a list of assets, of video clips that you need from me? I already had the list. So I went ahead and emailed it over. Now, here's the deal. I got another person, his assistant or right-hand man, asked for a copy of it. And I said, man, ignore the gender. But she was like, wow, how did you put together that list so quickly? It's because I was already working on planning. Your strategy needs to be first. It needs to be done well in advance so you know how to think about what you're building, so you're prepared when things happen. And when somebody drops a line saying, give me a list of 25 things that I can record, you can send them 27, like I did. Listen, working ahead is, again, it's going to lower your stress. It's going to give you the time you need to take care of yourself. All of this is so vital. This is the piece of advice nobody shares. And I think it's because nobody understands it. But I've had to figure this out. I've been in this situation way too many times. And you can weather these storms. You can have deaths and families. You can move across the country. You can end up in the hospital and still keep your business afloat without stressing too much.
Well, and without giving away too much of your presentation at the summit, this is precisely why you started the summit, to help other solopreneurs recognize that they're not in this alone.
Right.
And, there's a lot of fields where that are basically personality dependent.
Yeah.
Think of a doctor. But when your doctor's out of pocket, he's got somebody to cover for him. And this is where the Solopreneur Life and the hub and all of that become vital, because we build a network of folks that can step in. And you may not have a husband who's in the who can step in, and
Right.
I'm glad I was able to at that moment. But what if not? You need to have a network. You need to have a support group.
Yes.
And so that's going to be exciting, which is, again, you mentioned the dates, April 20th through 21st.
Yes, it's a 2-day event, Wednesday and a Thursday in April. I'm hoping to miss Easter and all the graduation stuff. So,
But you also have a really big announcement to make.
Oh,
leading up to
yes,
that.
and
So,
you need to be
yeah.
there. Listen, guys, I have so many cool things in store for you. Put it on the calendar. Join me inside Solopreneur Life, and listen, you need to join the hub. That's a big piece of it. And if you're already in the hub, some of these new things that are coming along, you're going to be grandfathered into. So if you are the least bit interested, now is the time to join. And that's it for today. I am so happy you joined me, and I'm so happy to be able to have done a full-length presentation today. I was worried, but just a little more time till my next pain med, so I'm probably going to go hang out on the sofa for a little while. In the meantime, you stay awesome.